Our founder, Herbert Whitley, collected books. He was a very broad natural historian, and he collected books. There was no internet in those days, there was no TV, so they read, and he read a lot, and he accumulated books. He engaged with other similar like-minded people, and he developed the first origins of our collection. And then we've been, when he died in 1955, we've been slowly adding to it ever since. I mean, some of his stuff goes back to the 19th century, so it's kind of irreplaceable stuff. We've got things like the series of G.V.T. Matthews, Birds of Australia, which is our most valuable series, that dates from the 1920s, and we've got a lot of older stuff that's got these wonderful hand-coloured paintings within them. So, these days we just take photographs of everything. In those days, many of the books and even the journals were illustrated with these beautiful hand-painted little vignettes, if you like. And quite often because I like to browse in libraries, I go through these things and I just open a volume and I find these incredible little illustrations and then all sorts of detailed natural history around them. And so I mean, probably in terms of unusual books, we have actually got I discovered it in the library about 10 years ago, a first edition of Roger Torrey Peterson's Field Guide to the Birds of North America, Eastern North America. And the reason that's significant is it was genuinely the very first proper field guide in a modern format ever published in 1934. And the first edition is quite rare. And I discovered it just hiding away on a shelf, wasn't registered or anything like that. I thought, whoa, what's this? And it's actually an extremely valuable and interesting book. We have quite a long series of journals of things like Ibis and the Bulletin of the British Ornithologists Club and the Proceedings of the Zoological Society Proceedings of the Zoological Society is its name. And some of those journal runs go back into the late 19th century. The Avicultural Magazine is another example. We've got almost a complete set of those. Though ironically, with the Avicultural Magazine, again, in the early editions, it used to have these beautiful hand-painted, and Herbert cut them all out, and he stuck them in his own albums. And so we've still got the journals, they're all bound, but the primary illustrations from them have all been taken out, and they are now in a set of other books and news cutting books that we've inherited from him. So, thanks Herbert, but such life, at least we still have them, we still have the full set. I think we've actually got 2 volumes we think missing from the Avicultural Magazine run. But of course in this day and age people don't read journals in the way they used to. All our scientific staff here read them all online, and so most of the journal runs, because they occupy a lot of space, are now over in the archive, and a lot of libraries are getting rid of their journal runs because it's all, you can get all those back numbers are now online. There's various large library type organisations online who, for example, have scanned a lot of the 19th century literature, and you can now available just online to look at. So it's becoming in this digital age, it's becoming less necessary for people to actually visit a library and come and sit in it, which I think is sad. I know you can do this online, but in libraries I often sort of end up drifting across things and looking at different things and picking it out, and I think it makes me a more rounded zoologist, if you like. I still use it a lot, actually. I often, in my work, sort of think, oh, actually, can I just check that particular fact, biological fact, or historical fact, actually, because natural history is very much bound up in nature and history, and it's developed as a sort of three-dimensional thing, if you like. We go back in time. Many of our books talk about the world as it was then, and it's very different from the world as it is now. People forget, I think, how different and how abundant nature was even 50 years ago compared with what it is now. And each generation accepts the immediacy of what's around it as how the world really is. But actually it wasn't like that. The world was much more complicated, much more diverse, and much more abundant. And that's and we started to see a little bit of stuff I've seen in the media recently about, for example, everybody's saying, when I drive along the roads, why are there no bugs on my windshield anymore? oh, where have they all gone? And you know, we all remember in our childhood that there were bugs all over the windshield, and that doesn't happen. And the reason, of course, is pesticides, modern intensification of agriculture, urbanisation, and suddenly populations, things just disappear, drift away, and nobody notices, which is a scary thing for a zoologist, a conservationist like me. I mean, I love all books, and I'm very eclectic in what I read, and I love the fact that we have, you know, the full set of the International Zoo Yearbook, for example, and those sorts of things. Just recently, we've been purchasing this amazing series called The Handbook of the Mammals of the World, which is, I think, a 7 or 8 volume series with literally illustrations and pretty much everything that is known about mammals of the world, down to species level. And so somebody had to sit there and paint, you know, 1,000 different little brown bats. It's an astonishing achievement, and we've got them all in here. That's a recent one. But of the more old-fashioned ones, I was recently reading, I say recently, in the last couple of years, a book which I found in the library here called African Game Trails, and it was written by Theodore Roosevelt, the Teddy Roosevelt, who was the American president. And after he stepped down from the presidency, he participated in a museum-sponsored expedition to East Africa, where they were shooting, they were collecting specimens, as that's how it was done in those days. And we've got the book that he wrote afterwards explaining, you know, about the trip. But the reason it's significant is that he was travelling through Kenya and up into the Sudan, and he actually collected the northern white rhinos. Most of the northern white rhino specimens that are now in museums date from that expedition. And of course, as we know, northern white rhino it will become extinct in the next 5 years because there are only 2 animals left, 2 old females in Kenya. So everything that we know, every physical remain of that species was collected by Teddy Roosevelt in 1910, and now is in major American museums. You know, setting aside the issue about shooting wild animals, I mean, he was actually a conservationist, as everybody knows, well ahead of his time. He established many of the great national parks in the United States, and it's kind of, I was fascinated to read it, the sort of thing he was able to do. I'm not sure there's anything that doesn't belong here, because it's quite an eclectic collection. I mean, we've got everything from, you know, agriculture through to invertebrates, fish. We've got the big series, most of the big encyclopedia series. We've got actually the entire reprint collection from one of our previous chairmen, a guy called David Stradling, who was an entomologist employed by the University of Exeter. And when he retired, David donated his entire reprint collection to us, which occupies some shelves just up over here. I mean, there's thousands of them. We haven't yet been able to catalogue them. And also, I guess, as part of our collection archive, we also have a photographic archive, which is administered in the same sort of way. And we've received the slide collection from another of our former trustees, Michael Proctor, who's a fantastic botanist who wrote a couple of the books in the collection here, the New Naturalist series. And we've got his slide collection as well, which we're in the process of cataloguing and working out what he had photos of. So, in the sense that with such an eclectic collection, by definition there can't be anything in it that's particularly unusual, but at the same time, everything is, and we cover everything. We cover paleontology, we cover agriculture, we cover botany, we've got, you know, fish, and the history of zoos, of course, as well. Most books that have been published about zoos are here in the library.